Bill Henshaw here again, your friendly local constitutional troop from California. And today's subject is a very threatening one for all of us, central bank digital currency. They're in the process of attempting to pass a bill right now, which I think even if that occurs, it might take until after the next quote unquote election. And hopefully Trump will take care of business if in the event that happens. But this is potentially the worst idea that's ever been put forward in Washington, D.C., my former hometown. They can do that. They gain as if they don't have total control now over everybody in the government. It's going to get that way in a hurry because you get this BS digital currency that replaces the undefined Federal Reserve note, where we should have gold and silver coin in our federated Republican form of government of defined and limited powers. There's nothing they can't do. God, even to think about it, it's mind-boggling. What can happen there, and apparently, among other things, that is digital currency, they can time out. So if you don't use it in the amount of time you have for it, it just disappears, gone. Not even an administrative hearing in one of the BS administrative tribunals, but the underlying reason why we need to stand up and fight, all of us, black, white, Asian, you name it. Because if they can do that with this, digital currency, and it's equally true with Federal Reserve notes, which represents our property in the form of our time and labor, then they have total absolute power. There's no need for any elections. You just send in the troops, game over. But that's not how we started out with the original intent of those racist framers. They recognized creator endowed and alienable rights, the sanctity of human life and value. And we went from there and we became the greatest nation in history in the space of just over 100 years. That speaks volumes for why we want it back. No, it wasn't perfect, but we get it back. We can make changes and do it the right way. And everybody benefits across the board. Got even to think about this, what they can do with it. And it's bad enough they can create money out of debt themselves with the Federal Reserve, something that we can't do. We'll be talking more about that on an upcoming video, so pay close attention. And somehow when they create money, they have rights. We show up in their courts, quote unquote, administrative tribunals, and we don't have anything but an equitable interest, quote unquote, which means we don't have any right to a judicial court. And if any of you viewers out there have seen one of those recently, a judicial court that is, I'd love to hear it. They don't need it anymore. They don't need trial by jury. They don't need habeas corpus. They don't need anything. What they say goes in Washington, D.C. And all of this is compounded when you learn, and you will, and by the way, send me an email, youwinnincourt@gmail.com for more information here. Because we're going to learn in Congress right now, and that's what the capital C-O-N, looking at our Constitution, it calls for a racial representation and forum to do business. Racial representation. It's in Article 1, Section 2, 30,000 to 1. Now, today, with a population of, 225 million, if you do the math, this is astounding. It looks like the way I do the math, in Congress, we don't need 435. We need about 3,900, and maybe more than that. And it makes sense, all of it. Because that way, and this is why they can't have it happen, because that way you have a lot smaller congressional districts, and crooks like me and you can go out there and actually run for Congress comparatively inexpensively, not be beholden, to the New York bankers or political parties for any of our actions. And that makes it really bad for them. Add to this that also with this smaller size district will be much able to come back when we're not actively involved in Congress, which, by the way, as you learn, only is required 1 day a year. But more about that later. Send me an email, uwinandcourt@gmail.com, and we can then take time out to be responsive to the people that voted us in and elected us, and even the ones that didn't, in our offices, because we have a right to instruct our representatives as to what we want them to do. And that's been all but impossible for the last 140 years. And by the way, this is a big point why most government in any event needs to devolve back to the states, sovereign, independent states admitted into this union, and better yet, on the community level. Probably a good 75% of government total belongs there, not in the state capital, quote unquote, not in Washington, D.C., on the local level. That's how it works best. And changes can get made. They can do it the right way and much easier. I mean, that's the government we want back. You want to learn how to do that? Send me an email, uwinandcourt@gmail.com. But this CDBC may be a blessing in disguise, because if they can do that, they can do anything. And I mean, the game is over. A lot of people think it has been since at least 1938. Anyway, a case called Eatery Railroad, and that's with 3 E's, versus Harry Tompkins, 304 U.S. 64. And you'll learn more about that. And the fact that the current justices apparently, in the last term, had a case on the docket to review that decision. That's very interesting. And like I say, you'll learn more. And my expansive knowledge of the Supreme Court, and if I do say so, I'm one of the kinds. It got taken off calendar. I'm not sure exactly why, but we'll talk more about it later. But once they recognize our sovereign independent states and our just and goodness state citizenship, all of that goes away. Because all that crap they have in Washington, D.C. now and Federal Reserve is based on few solely foreign state, subordinate, corporate, dead citizens. 14th Amendment, that amendment, as you'll learn, and I can prove a cappella off the top of my head, does not exist and never has. That's a big key for our freedom and liberty, and I'm convinced that most of the justices on today's Supreme Court know exactly what I'm talking about, and probably why to a great extent too. But the timing hasn't been there. It will be in the next term, because now we're going to be after the election, and they could make decisions there, wake the American people up, and do it the right way, guys. Tell them what you're doing and why, for crying out loud. You're going to get so much support, your approval rating is going to zoom, astronomically if you just do things like that. Like with Roe v. Wade, tell the American people you didn't overrule that. It couldn't have. 14th Amendment decision that never existed. Tell people the right way to get there with that issue, and everybody will be happy all the way around. Now, like a lot of folks, I'm not thrilled with the idea of abortion anyway, although in this day and age, I would have even more reason not to have a family, and I made that decision 40 years ago when I started out here. I said, well, if I can't put family first, got no business having one. That's much more true today, especially, with the situation that we're dealing with now, and all the crap in the schools, and they're teaching these kids the woke agenda, transgenderism, and now abrosexuality. Give me a break. Wake up one day, you're a woman, the next day, you're a man, the next day, who the hell knows? But that's a civil right, isn't it? Except for the fact the 14th Amendment doesn't exist. It's just crazier than you can believe. But I have the God-given ability, and I'm thankful for that every day, along with my good health, to connect a lot of dots and explain it to you so that you can do that in your cases and have a chance to get out of there, get the case dismissed, or maybe even do better in an odd sort of way by setting an unopposed record in the trial court that we can use to go against them. And with the Supreme Court now having our backs, I'm convinced of it. Send me an email, uwinandcourt@gmail.com. And I've gotten a little off track with the debit currency, but you get the idea here. Government can do that, and they can give it or take it as they see fit. And who knows? I mean, they have the Chinese already in control of the voting machines. Why don't they take over control of the digital currency as well? Shouldn't be a big deal. Let them have it in Beijing. What the hell? So these are the kind of things we have to fight off here. And hopefully Trump gets in. And even if he doesn't have a majority in either house, this legislation is so offensive, it might prevent it from getting enacted, or at least ensure that if he vetoes things, that the Republicans will have enough members in the House and the Senate where they can't override the veto. So this is amazing. But a good move you can make now, by the way, to plan in advance, is go out there and get as much in the way of silver in particular as you can, and maybe even gold if your circumstances permit it. Because with that uh, CBDC crap coming in, if it does, you have gold and silver, and one way or another, you can get into Safeway and buy food, among other things. If that doesn't change, that worked back in the Depression days, and that's why they tried to remove all the gold and silver from the American people in 1933 for that very reason, and it'll work now. So, that's what you should be taking a long look at doing, and that will at least secure you for the time being. And if this thing gets into be full time, we'll talk more about that later. I don't think it's going to, certainly not this year with an election year. But that said, send me an email for more information, uwomencourt@gmail.com, and we'll discuss this technology more fully and completely. And by the way, I think even if it were initially enacted to be voluntary, don't buy into it. Because if they can do that, it's just a matter of time before it will become mandatory, and maybe without much action even needed by Congress. Who knows how these idiots work behind the scenes? So oppose that, with all your efforts. It's vital for you, your family, and your posterity that we get that back, and we get our nation and republic back. The original intent of those racist framers. And no, it wasn't a perfect government, only the best one we've ever had, or anyone has ever had for that matter. We can go back to that, make changes, and do it the right way. Come out a hell of a lot better. Wow. So that said, send me an email, uwomencourt@gmail.com. Subscribe, tell your friends, get the word out. The quicker and faster we take action, the sooner we get the job done. Thank you.